Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Let's go. Let's laugh. We are imperfect after all.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the Imperfect Us podcast.
I'm Leanne Camilleri.
And I'm Lisa Downs. As hosts of the Imperfect Us podcast, we share relatable stories that celebrate we are all perfectly imperfect humans leading perfectly imperfect lives. We discover practical and evidence-based strategies that draw on the science of well-being and positive psychology that help us to uncover the barriers that might hold us back from being our authentic selves and turn them into opportunities so that we can show up more consistently, doing what we really aspire to do and who we want to be.
We acknowledge the Wadawurrung and the Kaurna people as traditional custodians of the beautiful lands on which this podcast is being recorded. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend this respect to other First Nations people who are here with us today. So, let's get started. Hey there, before we start today's episode, we want to let you know that part of this conversation refers to suicide, which we know can be distressing. So we ask you to please take care of yourself. If you need any resources or support, please go to beyondblue.org, or for 24-hour free counselling in Australia, call Lifeline on 131114. We're really excited to be speaking with Paul Callaghan today. Paul is an Aboriginal man belonging to the land of the Worimi people, now called Port Stephens. Paul has held several senior executive positions in his career, including CEO of New England TAFE, where he had the responsibility for 1,200 staff, 23,000 students, and an annual budget of $65 million. Paul has qualifications in surveying, drafting, commerce, training, executive leadership, company boards, and executive coaching. Paul also has a PhD in creative practice. His most important learning, however, has been through going bush with elders. Paul is also an author of The Dreaming Path, which became a bestseller in Australia in September 2022. It received the Australian Book Industry Award for Small Publishers Adult Book of the Year in 2023. His book has also been published in France and Germany and will be published in the USA in October 2023. Let's meet Paul. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. And for those that are tuning in, you wouldn't believe the last half an hour in terms of technology. So I'm really happy that we're here because it's an insight into life. Sometimes there are little speed bumps just when you think you're ready to launch off the runway, and it didn't stop us.
No, it
did not. Paul, we would love to hear about what led you to the work that you do.
Well, it's an interesting thing in terms of what led you, because being an Aboriginal person who was totally grounded in my spirituality, and also an accountant, and also recently finishing with a doctorate and doing academic papers, there's the kind of academic, analytical, scientific part of my brain versus the spiritual part of my brain, or spirit really. And where does that all work? So what led me to the work I do? I don't know if something led me or if it just happened. It's kind of an interesting argument. Yeah. I talk a lot about flow, and my life flowed to where I am now. And when I look back at my life, and hindsight is an amazing teacher, I can see how the dots connect to get me to where I am now. So what I'll do is give you a few of those dots. So I went through high school, was the first person in my Aboriginal community to go to year 12. Was told I wasn't smart enough to go to uni by a non-Aboriginal careers advisor, and believed him, and so did a diploma in surveying and then a diploma in drafting. But in my 30s, I did a degree in accounting, a degree in commerce, and I majored in accounting and economics. So those events were leading me somewhere, but I wasn't sure where. But then on the day of my 35th birthday, I remember sitting at the steps at the university I was working at and not feeling too happy with life, and I started to cry, and I ended up somehow getting home, which was a feat. It was a 1-hour drive, curling up in a bed in the fetal position for 3 months with acute anxiety and depression. And the only time I could leave the house because of the panic attacks was to see the psychologists and psychiatrists and medicos. And when I tried to adopt a positive approach to it, to say, how do I fix this? Everyone said it's incurable and you'll be like this for the rest of your life. So I took that to heart and I thought, well, my wife is really young. She's only 30. I've got 3 kids under 5. They don't deserve this life sentence. And at that time, I had everything you could have thought of. I had 3 jobs. I had 3 qualifications. I had a wife, I had a house, I had a car. I was a success story, but inside I wasn't. And in fact, because I didn't want to be a burden on my family, who I love very much, I thought the only way to free them is to kill myself. So I walked down the road on a particular day to do it, and it wasn't because I wanted to escape the pain. I didn't want to be a pain. That's why I wanted to do it. And as I went to do it, a random thought came to me and said, you don't have to do this, you know. You don't have to listen to the specialists. You can listen to yourself and you can heal yourself and prove them all wrong. And when you do, you can be there as a resource for others. And so that was a starting point. And I trudged up the hill, and it wasn't the miraculous click the fingers, I'm suddenly better, because it's not an attitudinal thing, mental health. It's a way of reflecting and growing. And so I started to read, and I read spiritual books, I read psychological books, I read all sorts of books I read books on brain physiology to try and figure out what was going on, given I wasn't happy with what the experts were telling me. And I started to heal a little bit, but then I got taken bush by elders, and that was a total shock, because I'd been told that there's no culture left on the east coast of Australia, it's all dead. And that's not true at all. It's just that people had to be very, very subtle with it because of what others would say. So I got introduced to that, and I didn't just run into it with a naive mind. I was prudent, and I went, okay, I'll see what this is about. And all I found was good stuff. I found education, I found learning, I found nurture, I found healing, and I healed. And as I started to heal, I thought, all I want to be is the old me, the old happy me. And what happened was, over a period of time, is I looked back and I realised I'd never ever become that person. I never became the old me. I became something far better. I became the real me. And that's the secret, because when I look back at my life, and the sessions with the psychologists and counsellors weren't a waste of time at all, because I was able to piece it all together. And one of my counsellors, he said to me, Paul, I don't know if I can help you much, but I can tell you this. What is happening to you is a message to you, from you, about you. And he said, once you unpack that message, you'll be on your path to healing. Mm. And I figured out the message. It took me a while, but I figured it out, and that was I could be myself. Because I'd spent my life trying to be all things to all people at all times, and it exhausted me. And the reason I tried that was because I hated myself, because I'd grown up with those awkward teenage years that most of us go through, plus a layer of racism. So I went through all the stuff that we go through, where we're challenged about our body image and what are we going to be, but also I suffered from being called the dumb black coon, and he's the bunga, and he's the dumb fella, and all that. And I found myself an outsider trying to fit in all the time, hence me becoming a people pleaser. But once I had this awakening, I thought I can be me. And so I ended up in TAFE in a job as a manager of the Aboriginal unit, and I still had anxiety, but I faked it and pretended I was confident. And what happened over a period of 18 months is eventually I wasn't faking it. I actually was quite confident, and I was a bit shocked with all that. And then I got all these promotions. I became the head of equity, I became the head of business, and then I became the first Aboriginal person to be a CEO of TAFE. I was in charge of New England TAFE, where I had 1,200 staff, 23,000 students, ran a $65 million budget, and we were voted the best TAFE in New South Wales and top 3 in Australia in my 3rd year. All those things are going really great. And then I was headhunted into another government position where I could work with our mob in housing. And I thought, wow, I finally reached what I'm meant to do in my life. This is what I'm meant to do. And very quickly I realised I'd become too senior, and I was totally controlled by government and politicians and policy, and I couldn't help anybody. And so I had to fall on my sword, and my career was gone. But during that 12 months of realising that my career was over, I felt a need to write, for no other reason than a need. And so I just did. I say it to people, when you feel like writing, don't think about it, just do it. So I self-published a book called Iridescence, and it became quite successful, and I sold over 3,000 copies just by word of mouth when I spoke at different events. And I tried to get it into the mainstream, but it didn't work. But then one day I delivered a workshop for Ronald McDonald House Charities, and the CEO came to me and said, I really love your book. And I said, yeah, right. And he showed it to me. It was torn, it had coffee stains, it had Post-it notes. And I went, wow, he means it. And so I went home and I thought, he's an intelligent man. If he thinks my writing's all right, I might have another go at getting it out there. And so I contacted someone that I'd only met once and spoke to them for a year. And I sent an email and I said, look, can you give me the name of the publisher you spoke about for my book? Because I'm going to have a go. And he said, better than that. A week ago, I was talking to my literary agent in Paris and I mentioned you and he's keen to meet you. And within 48 hours, I had a contract with a literary agent in Paris who then went to Dusseldorf Book Forum and got 3 bidders in Australia that wanted me to write a book.
Wow.
And then that then fed into my consultancy work, my wellbeing work, all the things I do. And that then led to me doing a PhD. And so when you pull it all together, it's this combination of being guided and the gates opening spiritually, but also me putting in the grunt and saying, yeah, I'm not beaten. I'm just going to go in a different direction because I know this is all happening for a reason. So what led me to do the work I do? It was my life experience. It was my positivity. It was definitely my connection with Aboriginal values. It was a bit of luck, and it was just continuing to go no matter what.
Yeah, such determination towards what's of value to you, and that beautiful message for you about who you are and what you want to be.
Yes, and that's the trick I say to all people. At the end of the day, pull back the layers of the onion and go to the centrality and say, who am I? Because from when we're at school, we get brainwashed into being something we're not. We get sold a foreign vision of success about materiality and about power and prestige, and we get sucked into consumerism that says, I'm only happy when I buy things.
Yeah.
And that's not what it's about at all.
No, definitely not. Such wisdom that you share, especially I love your dreaming path and I just absolutely love it. I've connected very deeply with it as I read it. And like you said about the other gentleman who had dog-eared and coffee stains, that's what line's like. And are you able to help us to understand the key principles or the values that are commonly found in Indigenous ways of being, particularly with our Australian Indigenous families?
I can't say I've done an in-depth research of spirituality across the world in terms of Indigenous paths. I can say that the person who co-wrote the book with me, Uncle Paul Gordon, he's got some quotes in the book where he says, once upon a time, the law, which is a shortened term for the word folklore, which really isn't the word that describes our culture. Our word is the Nurumpa. But law means our values and ways of being. And so he says in the Dreaming Path that once upon a time, law was across the entire world and we were all connected.
Yeah.
And that's a big story about we're all connected through spirit and love and energy. And so I would therefore think, based on that, intuitively, the things that we embrace are embraced by Indigenous cultures throughout the world. And certainly I had the great privilege of being a keynote speaker at a World Indigenous Healing Conference in San Francisco a few years ago, because I'm a healer as well as other things. And I certainly found a lot of commonality there. So the things that I'll share that are really the key elements for us, I'll say the words and then I'll unpack them very, very briefly. So love, respect, humility, always share, and the two other biggies are facing our responsibilities and acknowledging our relationships. So love is a no-brainer. Our old people say that all things have spirit, including rocks. Yeah. All things are conceived in love. All things are born in love. All things live in love. And when our time is done, we all go back to love. So love is really the cornerstone of all things. And there's a big Dreamtime story that haven't got time to talk about today, but there's a big dream time story that in summary is our Father Creator saw the mother being born because the earth was once surrounded by water. The mother was born. The father said, wow, I've never seen anything as beautiful as that. He came down. He met the mother. They fell in love. He had to fulfill his responsibilities of going back into the sky. But because of their love, she became pregnant and gave birth to all things. And that's why we're all family, but also we come from love. And when we dance in the dirt to raise the dust, to reconnect the love of the father and the mother, to remind us that we must always be loving in everything we do. And some people have argued with me, but they haven't won it yet. And that is, in our way, across the 500 languages across the country, there's no word for hatred. Our word is all about love. Now, the people that argue, they've given me all sorts of arguments, but I've got a Dr Ray Kelly at the University of Newcastle who did a PhD in languages, and he tells me that there's no word for hatred. So I'm going to accept that until I'm proven otherwise, and I'm happy to be proven otherwise as well. So love isn't just romantic love. Love is unconditional love. Love is connecting with country. Love is giving. It's not just that romantic love's important, but it's not the most important. The most important love is connecting with the broader spirit, the broader feeling of country and those around us, and feeling that love and giving that love. The second one is respect. So respect all things, but really important, respect yourself. Quite often, I do a lot of work in my consultancy with a lot of people in the health industry and other giving industries, and they kind of respect everything around them, but they don't respect themselves enough in terms of their own self-care. Always be humble. There are a lot of stories about don't let that ego fella get in there and trick you, because he's very tricky ego. You'll get in there and suddenly we'll start thinking we're doing something for the right reasons, and it's not, it's ego. And so always be humble in what we do. And so quite often when people come to me with issues, because I mentor over 300 men, when there's a problem, if we look at love, respect and humility, you'll find there's something going wrong there. And then we can talk about that and help them. But the fourth one is always share. The term is napachi napachi. We must always share. We must always give. So in our way, if we get something, we give it and share it. And it'll come back. It's not about trade one-on-one. It's about putting it out there unconditionally, not worrying about it. And it will come back at some point. And I'm certainly very big on that. I live all these things. And responsibility is an interesting concept because Western world is all hung up about rights. I have the right to have a car. I have the right to get a driver's license. I have the right to drink alcohol. The Aboriginal world, we don't look at age. We look at when you can demonstrate your responsibility. So in our way, if we did have driver's licenses and cars, we'd say, well, you prove to me you can be responsible with that driver's license. I don't care about your age. You prove to me that you can be responsible about drinking. And so it was with the knowledge we were given to become responsible adults. So initiation is actually a graduation ceremony to say you are now given responsibility to be an adult. And that's when you are then given responsibility to uphold the law. And the law in English means I must always care for my place and all things in my place. And imagine the world if we all woke up every morning saying everything I do will be about caring for my place and all things in my place. And the last one is relationships. And so we need to build relationships, but people forget about the layers of relationships. There's relationships with each other, and that's important, and we don't do that enough, and social media is undermining that. But there's relationships with ourselves. Quite often we don't have a good relationship with ourselves. Australia particularly is a really hard country in terms of that old knockerism. Not ockerism, it's knockerism. I've got to knock, 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 knock. I've got to knock people down. I've got to bring them down to size. Why? Why can't you nurture me? Why can't you grow me? Why must you cut me down all the time? Grow me. And so we grow up, and certainly with me, I didn't like myself. Poor self-esteem. Didn't have a good relationship with myself. I do now. And the third layer is a relationship with our country. It's important to walk country, connect with country, acknowledge country. A lot of us do that intuitively. COVID taught us, what did we miss? We missed being out in nature. That's because that's your family. And so part of relationships is understanding that country loves me, but if you're not into the spiritual side, that's okay. Just think about it from a purely scientific way. Country gives me oxygen. Country gives me water. Country gives me food. If I don't have water, food and oxygen, I'm not here. I eat food. My cells regenerate every amount of so many years. That comes from country. So I am country. I'm part of country. So build a good relationship with country. We belong to the land, we don't own it. We're in it. So think about it that way.
When I read your book, Paul, that was just something that I connected with straight away. Was I care for my place and all things in my place. And it made perfect sense because I guess to feel balanced and listening to your story, it resonated with me. I guess many of us have stories that impact how we show up in the world, and that knowing of self, that deep knowing, releases you from the challenges that we can experience. I found that a really beautiful perspective to have, a beautiful way of being. Is it a way of being? Is that how we would describe it?
Yep. Well, see, the way to think about that, and again, this is our spirituality, but I don't expect people to become Aboriginal spiritual kind of leaders or participants, really. It's thinking about what is the story behind the spiritual metaphor and thinking about that. So in our way, our mother is beautiful, the most beautiful thing ever. And so when we pass, we go over into the Warrnambool in the Milky Way for a little while with spirit, and we rest, and that's the stars, that's the campfires in the Milky Way, and then the Milky Way are the smoke from the campfires. We rest, but when we're ready, we come back to our country because that's the most beautiful place. But also our body goes back into the mother and it breaks down and becomes part of the nutrients, part of the nutrient cycle. So then our body breaks down and then something grows from our nutrients and we become part of that. Then something eats, let's say it's grass, we become part of the grass, and then the kangaroo eats the grass, we become part of the kangaroo. Then the kangaroo goes and does a poo and a seed falls in it and a tree grows with fruit, we're part of the fruit. Then a bird eats the fruit, we're part of the bird. And we do believe we come back time and time again, so we are part of everything. Not only that, we're 60% water. So when our water goes back into the water system, it goes up into the sky and comes back as rain, and we're part of that. So we fall on everything and we're part of everything. So this is a big story about we are all one. And once we start pulling away, we then start getting sick. And I know from all my readings in psychology and mental health, it's the unity and the oneness that supports us. It's when we pull away and alienate that we start to place ourselves at risk. And so our big story is we are one, but not just with each other as people. We're one with the land, we're one with nature, we're one with the sky, we're one with the clouds. And the old people say when it rains, that soft rain, that's happy rain. That's the old people crying with joy that they've been remembered and they're reconnecting with us to remind us of that love. So some people say, oh, that's all new age rubbish, but it's not. It's actually old age wisdom.
And you feel it. I'm fairly high in spirituality, and I know for me, when I'm not in nature, I am not well. And it's a very interesting thing. As soon as I'm in nature, I can get back to my authentic self. It's just so powerful. I can't be knocked with it.
Yeah. And that's because nature is your family. In that big Dreamtime story of the creation, the mother gives birth to all things. And so all things are family, and she gives birth to people last. And that's done quite deliberately. And I say to people in workshops, why do you think humans were born last? And they say, well, we needed everything else there so we can eat it, which is a bit Garden of Eden. But it's the opposite. Aboriginal ways of being are the opposite to a lot of the other ways. So we were born last, not so we can eat everything. We were born last to remind us we should never place ourselves above nature. And we were born last to remind us that the trees and the birds and the animals are our older siblings. And if we really want to learn, go out and sit in the bush and be quiet. And I can promise you that works. Go to the bush and be quiet, and that's when you'll come up with your answers. And the scientific people say, yeah, but that's because I slowed my brain down and I was able to get in touch with me. Yeah, maybe. But in our way, it's because you're out there letting go of all that, but you're connecting with something bigger than you, and that's your family. And we know that loneliness is epidemic throughout the world right now. But if you really understand that nature is your family, you'll never be lonely.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of those moments where, I go out into nature. Sometimes you feel called by nature, don't you?
Yep. Well, that's your family saying, come out here, you've forgotten.
Yeah.
You've forgotten we're here for you. That's I would argue that's your intuitive self connecting with something bigger than you, which is what spirituality is. And it's important to follow that calling.
Yeah.
And as soon as you follow that calling, it is just almost like I was meant to be here. That's the big thing
100%.
that I find. It's just, and you can feel it in your heart immediately.
Yep.
Not necessarily in your head, it's in your body.
100%. In our way, it's in your belly.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
It's in your belly, because your belly button, when you're inside your biological mother, is what feeds you. And then when you're born, spiritually, your belly button's attached to the Mother Earth, and she feeds you. So your belly button's always your guide.
That's why sometimes when you feel sick in your tummy, something's not up.
Correct.
Ah, interesting. I love that.
The Aboriginal way of being suggests that no one person can be well if all people, things and places are not cared for. How does this impact our well-being?
Well, it taps into what I was saying, and I guess this is my favourite. I love talking about culture, obviously. I do it all the time, and I never get sick of it, but this is my favourite thing to talk about. So the way to introduce it is that if you look at the definition of well-being from a clinical perspective, and unfortunately, I do a lot of work in the health system, particularly in hospitals, and there is still too much emphasis on clinical practice and not enough on other nurturing, supportive and cultural practice.
Yeah.
And clinical practice has its place, without a doubt. Without a doubt, it saves lives and it does great things, but we do need to balance that. So when you look at the clinical definition of well-being or health, it says a lack of symptoms, which is as bland as and doesn't really get it at all. Then you look at the World Health Organization definition of well-being, and they say it means a person is well, mind, body and spirit. That's getting there, but that's not where Aboriginal people are at all either. We go another layer, and that is, for me to be well, and this is a definition from the Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation, so it's there. To be well, I must be well in mind, body and spirit, but so must everyone around me, including non-Aboriginal people, and so must country. So the definition of well-being is really everyone on country and country itself are well. That's when well-being is achieved. So what is that about really? Well, it goes back to a premise, and that is our culture, our law, the spirituality that I've been sharing with you, it doesn't belong to the people. We happen to be in country, walking country, and we have the knowledge to share, but the spirit itself and the wisdom belongs to country. So Mother is an entity to us, and the culture belongs to that country. What does that mean? That means that anyone that comes onto this country, whether it be from 200 years ago or last year, is now on this country, so has the chance to connect to this country. But they need to do that through their local Aboriginal elders and other custodians. So in all the different places throughout Australia, what that's about is connecting with local community in a patient way, because communities have a lot happening. But learning how to connect with country, with that particular community. And once you do, you're part of that country. And so the big story is, and my role is to provide an overarching generic kind of view of Aboriginal culture to hopefully encourage people to go to a local level and find out what it means locally, because I honour and respect local custom and knowledge. But overarching, culture belongs to the country, spirit belongs to the country, the law belongs to the country. So therefore, I have an obligation as a knowledge owner to share it with you so you can connect with country and love it like I do. And when we do, then you become my brother and my sister, then you become part of my family, and also you have a responsibility to care for country. And when that happens, that's true reconciliation, and we have a circle together where we are all one. And the circle is really important because it has no start and end. It has no hierarchy. We can see each other, which means we're safe and we trust each other. So my view of Australia in the future, long after I'm gone, is a circle where we all love country, we all understand Aboriginal culture and the gift that it gives us, and then we are all one. And that's when we have achieved unity and well-being will be achieved. And that's a bigger story too about when Captain Cook came and when the First Fleet came, there were 500 different nations in Australia. But underpinning all of that diversity was one law, and that is I care for my place and all things in my place. Yeah. And so this is an important story that's even more important now, and that is the diversity that we have in Australia, which is beautiful, which I love, is only maximised when it's underpinned by unity and harmony. And Australia is not harmonious at the moment. It's not.
No,
we don't have one humanity where we're all working together. We have people pulling and marginalising and isolating. And when someone tries to create unity, someone else will say, no, you're trying to rip us apart, or you're not respecting diversity. Diversity is beautiful, but only when harmonised. And so the law says I care for my place, but in each nation we had a different story, we had different dance, we had different language, but we were united. And then when we visited, we would share. We wouldn't hold on. We'd share and say, here's a story, here's a dance, you can share that too. And that's when diversity is fully harmonised and and becomes powerful. And we need that to achieve well-being. So Australia is not a well place, and it won't be until we all heal. For Aboriginal people, from 3 generations from first contact, the research shows, because I've done a PhD in it, we lost 90% of our people right across Australia. So the year of first contact was different in different places, but only 10% of our people remained after 3 generations. So we suffered from trauma and transgenerational trauma. But you think about the people that came out on the boats, they were traumatised too. You think about the waves of migration that came to Australia since that time. They were fleeing persecution, they were fleeing hardship, they were looking for a better life. Those people are traumatised too. Even right now, people that are coming in, they're hoping for a better life, and they say, Australia, the lucky country. We are, but we're not in harmony. We need healing. We need to come together. And what is the one common denominator that we're all on? Country. So we can all come together and through country heal and truly become one, where there is still friction, but we're able to deal with the friction in a healing way, where we get closer and closer with each decade that passes, and then we will be in a place of well-being.
Yeah.
As one person in this big old wide world, how can I be starting to make a difference there?
Well, you've started already, and that is by gaining an understanding of Aboriginal culture. So by reading my book, but then reading other books, by going on to the internet and looking, at different articles about Aboriginal culture. And then when you're ready, go to things like NAIDOC Week and Reconciliation Week, and don't put the pressure on yourself to go out and build all these relationships and create marriages. Our people have a lot on, but just be seen. And that takes the pressure off you to have to do anything. Just go to events and be supportive in terms of your presence. And by doing that, you'll start to get an understanding of culture. And then over time, you might see someone down the street and you'll say hello. And then eventually it might be a friendship and then a coffee. And so it's small footsteps. We don't need anybody to go out and put on the cape and be the superhero. We want people to have an attitude of, I'm here to learn, I'm here to grow, I want to learn about country. Go and do some tours. Do it knowingly. Go into the bush and go, wow, this is for Aboriginal people, the mother, and I feel that, and I love that. And so when you do an acknowledgement of country, do it from the heart, where you talk about how you feel rather than stress about the words. And then when you're out and about at the barbecues and you hear people saying inappropriate things, be a little bit brave and do it in a safe way and in a nurturing way and say, look, I don't know about that. Yeah. I don't know about that. For instance, I was sitting down having a particularly nice piece of fish the other day, and someone came up to me and we're talking, and it was a nice conversation. And then out of the blue, he said, I don't know about them Aboriginals with this voice taking over all the farms. And so I took a deep breath and I just calmly had a yarn and said, how real do you think that possibility is, given that farms are under freehold title and legislative contractual arrangements and and Aboriginal people are 3% of the population? Do you really think that can be a reality? I don't. And so just challenge people's ways of thinking, because there is a lot of ignorance, and also there's a lot of misleading information that is used to alienate rather than to harmonise. And our culture is to bring us together. And so it's about small steps, because by coming together, we then start building this capacity where governments will have to start to listen.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's key for me, I've been fortunate enough to go on a beautiful tour with one of our elders in the Wadawurrung community and the country that we've had there for 3 days, and it was phenomenal. And she was able to share all sorts of wisdom. In hindsight too, is that I used to walk a lot on our country here with our family, and I've seen lots and lots of things throughout my time here. But when I went with a different lens of curiosity and really wide open eyes, I heard and saw things so differently that I had never seen. And I'd walked past all of these things before and I was, love them and embrace them. But the story behind everything just made learning and curiosity so much richer for me through the lens of her experience and her family and her country and her wisdom. It was just incredible.
Curiosity is a wonderful way of being. It's part of my life. When you think about it, I talk about storms in our life in terms of mental health. A storm in the natural world, you can't stop it from coming. It'll come. But all storms must pass. So it is with our life. We'll have storms in our life and we can either face them with anxiety and fear, or I argue you can face them with curiosity and say, well, this storm, I'm not sure what's in it, but I do know there'll be a silver lining, and I'll look at it with curiosity and I'll see what comes out of that. And I've had a lot of storms in my life, as have most people, and some of them I wouldn't wish on anybody, and I wish they didn't happen, but I always harvest the silver lining so it wasn't a waste. And so curiosity, I find, is a really great way to put fear in its place. So rather than be consumed by fear, you're looking at it going, yeah, I wonder what's happening here. And it takes away a lot of the adrenaline and the fight or flight or paralysis syndrome, and away we go. Yeah. And you go, well, that was pretty cool. Like, that was good, and away we go. So curiosity, I think, is a wonderful thing to have in your kit bag.
Yeah, totally. And I think that open-mindedness too, to, if you've got a belief, it's not necessarily the truth, at the time. So by being open-minded to other perspectives is so important to really clarify what those beliefs are that you have. And perhaps there is a learning in that too.
Well, there's a big story about that with our spirituality. I know a man who's old now, but when he was young, he was doing traditional practice right across the other side of the country, and he said it was so good. And he said, I'd been out there for quite a few days, but he said it came Saturday night, and one of the old bosses said, "All right, you fellas, get cleaned up. Tomorrow's Jesus Day." And he said, so he waited, because you always respect elders, particularly in a group. You don't talk really. But when he got with the old man on his own, he said, how come we're going to go and do Jesus Day? I thought we'd escape all that. And the old man said, no, you listen to his story, and he was a good fella, and he cared for people, and he was kind, and he healed people, and we can learn from him. So we take him in too. And so our spirituality evolves, and it's also very inclusive. It doesn't judge, it doesn't isolate, and it's not a competition to say we're the best, the rest of you are rubbish. It's harvesting and harnessing and saying, what is it that's got that can add to us, which is why we can share stories right across the country. That's why we can have 100 different stories on how the echidna got its quills, and we don't go into a big fight about going, mine's right, yours is wrong. Yeah. There's none of this judgment. There's all of this inclusion and caring.
The story is so powerful, and understanding or learning that a story might mean something to the younger people, but then as they grow, it grows too.
Yes.
I found that fascinating.
Yes, yeah. There are stories always have layers. And so as you grow, so you don't ever leave a story behind, you hold on to it forever. And when we share a story with someone new, we'll say, hold on to that story for at least 12 months. Don't tell it to anybody. You need to get to know that story. You need to make good friends with that story. You need to unpack that story. And a story never sits on its own. In a lot of instances, you'll have an art site, and it will have a story, it will have a song, it will have a dance, and it will have a caretaker. So you'll have 5 different entities overseeing that one thing to make sure Chinese whispers don't distort it, because the story must be kept pure. And each one of us has a story, and my learning from life is you need to treasure that story and respect it and love it. And the old people say, when we leave this world behind, all we leave behind is our story, so make it the best story possible. Most people aren't living their best story possible because in this Western world, we've been consumed by the clock, and we think that busy equals good. A busy story isn't a good story. And so I see people in the workplace wearing my consultancy hat that are on this downward spiral of competition to see who can be the most stressed. And if they're not stressed, they think they're letting the side down. And it's this whole global consumerism, economic drive. And I've lectured in economics, so I get it. And economics and commerce aren't good or bad. They just are. It's the way we harvest them. And so we're not harvesting what is around us in the Western world to maximise well-being. And by tapping into Aboriginal ways of knowing, being and doing, you can really harness the good stuff that's in the Western world.
Paul, thank you so much for all of this rich work so far. I'm just actually wondering, in what ways can non-Indigenous people and communities learn from and incorporate Indigenous perspectives and practices to foster a sense of well-being?
That's a really important question, and it's interesting. When I wrote the book, I hadn't really crystallised what are the key elements of well-being. It's more of a flow of narrative. But now I've done a few podcasts, I've actually created an acronym, and everyone loves a good acronym.
Oh, we love an
acronym. It makes it easy.
acronym.
And so you're getting a bit of a scoop, and you won't find this in the book because this is post-book where I've had to come up with an acronym.
Oh, yes.
So the way for everyone listening to this to remember it is to think about, you know, when we get that midnight snacky feeling, when we know there's something really good in the fridge, and you don't really want it, but you know there's a cold chocolate there in the fridge, and you're midnight and you're going, yeah, I'm going to get up and sneak that in. And so imagine getting there, but then rather than eat the chocolate, you decide, no, I'm going to lay down and do a bit of yoga. So imagine laying next to your fridge at midnight and a heap of cockroaches running over your face. There you go. You won't forget that one, will you?
No, I won't.
You won't forget that.
No.
Because the acronym is FM bugs, fast moving bugs. So there's a method in my madness. I want you to remember fast moving bugs. So as you remember cockroaches running over your face, then remember FM BUGS. And so this is the crystallization of what I've learned from the old people and put into the book. So for the key to a life of well-being in a very simple way, F stands for flow, always flow. A river flows, the breeze flows. Even when a leaf gets caught up in the river, eventually the current will take it and it will move. So in your life, if you aren't flowing, it's a sign that you aren't on your dreaming path, that you're on the wrong track, or there's an attitudinal thing, there's something not right where you need to sit down, probably in the bush, and have a think about it and say, how do I get flow back in my life? That doesn't mean we don't have little stoppages every now and then, but I'm saying if your life is always like it's a crash every day, I'm just hitting dead ends, that's the universe telling you you're not doing what you're meant to do in your life. M stands for mindfulness. So always live in the now. When you drive a car, you don't drive looking a kilometre ahead, you'll crash. You don't drive looking into your rear vision mirror, you'll crash. You'll get safely from A to B in your car by looking at what is right in front of you right now. And that's the secret to life. Be mindful. B stands for balance. So in everything you do, find balance. People are out of balance now because they go work-life balance, 50-50. No, work might be like 30-70. Get all the other things right. I noticed with younger people now, they're so frantically committed to their children that they spend every day of their waking life either working or running the kids to arts classes or dance classes or sporting things. Even that can get out of balance. You need to have time for yourself. So quite often I say to people, make sure in your diary that you have half an hour for yourself every week, maybe a Friday night where you say to the world, go away world, this is for me, whether it's a massage, whether it's sitting down with a wine, whether it's watching something you like on telly, whether it's going out and sitting in the bush. So that's balance. U stands for unity. Always bring unity into your life. Don't be one that fractures. So don't fracture what's around you. Be a place of harmony. G stands for gratitude. So always have gratitude for everything that you do. I actually keep a gratitude diary. I can show you something that I have gratitude for every day of my life over the last 5 years. Sometimes they're little things, sometimes they're big things. Sometimes it's the end of something really like painful. Like I've gone for a 5-hour drive and I get home and I say, oh, my gratitude today is I finally got home. So there's all sorts of things, and it gives me a health check because you look at diversity of gratitude and then you know that you're seeing gratitude in different lenses each day. And S stands for story. Always respect your story, share story, and support other people's story. So that's FMBUGS. That's fast moving bugs. That's those cockroaches at night.
I just love that this acronym is all underpinned by evidence-based wellbeing practices.
It doesn't surprise me because I've done a lot of workshops, because I do a lot of self-care workshops that go all day. And the number of psychologists that say, I've just done the latest groundbreaking workshop on the latest research, and now you're telling me that's 100,000 years old. And I go, well, there you go.
And if we go right back to from almost the top of our conversation where you talked about the importance of Aboriginal culture, where we have love, respect, humility, always sharing, responsibility in relationships, it all comes back to that beautiful foundation. And with that, any wonder we can get ourselves checking in whether our flow is going or not, and all of the other things. It's just so rich and also really, really authentic, and definitely my preferred way of wellbeing and way of being.
You think about that, the Aboriginal, I mean, people have to use a different lens when they look at Aboriginal ways. I mean, Tony Abbott once said, colonisation on reflection, and this is me ad-libbing, on reflection, the coming of the white sails was a good thing because it took Aboriginal people from the Stone Age to the modern age. That's using a wrong comparative. Aboriginal people for 100,000 years had all we needed to live a good life. We didn't need castles. We didn't need all of that. And so Aboriginal housing were gunyahs, but they are open so that we could see each other and foster relationships. And then when we moved on, because we didn't want to leach what was in one particular area of country, we'd lay it back in the ground and things would live in that. You think about our world now, we all run from an office or where we work into our house called the cave, and we lock it with keys, and we have bars all around it, and then we have fences and say, don't come near me. So everything about our world is alienating rather than uniting, even the way we live. And you look at communities now, everyone's frightened of each other, so there's no sense of community anymore. And so we're actually undermining the things that create wellness.
Paul, thank you so much for this deep learning that we've had the opportunity to have with you today. We are both so grateful. Besides your own fantastic work, and of course we'll be sharing the links in our show notes, is there a book or podcast, TED Talk that you'd recommend to our listeners today?
Yeah, there's a couple. And before I give them, in terms of the impacts of post-1788, I won't give any insights into that because I've researched lots of books about that as part of my PhD, but there's not one that stands out. And there's a lot of resource on Google that you can get on the internet. So please research those kinds of things, but do it with a lens of curiosity, but also trying to pick apart where you think truth lies, because there's a lot of writing that doesn't necessarily reflect what has happened. But in terms of understanding traditional ways of knowing, being and doing, which is what I'm really about, because I'm trying to reconnect people back with those old ways and then use those old ways in a contemporary way. There's a book called Australia's Kakadu Man. Australia's Kakadu Man by a beautiful old man who's gone now, a grandfather, but in the title, his name is Bill Neidje, so B-I-L-L and then N-E-I-D-J-E, Bill Neidje. When you read that book, he speaks in his own kind of way, which is a little bit of traditional language and a bit of English, but he's an amazing philosophical poet. When you read his books, he has a way of speaking that resonates with the spirit and the heart, and you know it's truth, and it really connects you with nature and spirit. So that is a beautiful book. And there's a clip if you go into your internet browser and put in Kanyuni, K-A-N for Neville, Y-I-N for Neville, I. So Kanyuni, K-A-N-Y-I-N-I, by a beautiful old fellow that's gone now called Uncle Bob Randall. It's a video clip where he's interviewed and he talks about connection to country and also the impacts of that disconnection in terms of well-being. And it's challenging but insightful and gives you a whole new layer of understanding of where Aboriginal people sit right now and the beauty that is there for all of us to reconnect with. So they're the resources I would recommend highly.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. I haven't heard of those two, so I would really like to explore that further. Paul, have you got your own favourite wellbeing tip or a strategy that you would like to share with us today with our audience? Something that it just resonates with you and you're using all the time?
I do. In fact, I have two. So you get a double bonus.
Oh, thank you.
The first one is homework for everyone listening. So being a former educator, I've got to give homework because you need to work on yourself, everyone out there. I use this technique all the time. I call it the 10 out of 10s exercise. So you guys would know it because you've read the book.
Yeah.
So a 10 out of 10 is something in your day that gives you joy. It doesn't have to be the best thing ever in your life, but it's something that you get out of the day, you go, wow. And so again, when I run workshops, I'll get people to break into pairs and I'll get them to identify all the 10 out of 10s that have happened that day before 9 o'clock. And they all freak out and go, oh, no, I haven't had a 10 out of 10 in the last 10 years. And it's to retrain our mind to start focusing on what is it that gives us joy. And then they'll start talking and the floodgates will open and it'll be simple things. And then I'll say, oh, all right, with these 10 out of 10s, how many of them cost a lot of money? And they go, no. And I'll say, how many of these 10 out of 10s took a lot of planning? They'll go, no. And so they're there. And so the homework is find a partner and for 10 nights in a row, share all the 10 out of 10s that have happened that day, all the good things that have happened that day. It could be right now the wattle's blossoming. I walk 3 or 4 times a day and the wattle is just starting to come out now. It's beautiful. It could be hearing a magpie's call. It could be hearing a child laugh. It could be the smell of coffee. It could be lots of things. It could be a red light turning green. You know, it could be all sorts of things. And so as you progress over the 10 days or 10 nights, you'll find that between you, you'll start coming up with more and more. And then that will start converting itself into real time and you'll start seeing them in real time. And you think about it, every day there are dozens of 10 out of 10s. If you notice them, when a 1 out of 10 comes, you'll go, well, that's okay. It's not going to take over my day because I know there's something good around the corner. So every day will be full of 10 out of 10s with an occasional 1, which means every week will be mainly 10 out of 10s, which means every month, every year in your life will be one of positivity. So that's number one. Number two, every one of you try and do this every night. If not, at least do it once a week because you might be a bit naughty. Take your shoes off, take your socks off, go out in the backyard so you don't get shamed up and wriggle your feet in the dirt and dust and sand and grass and whatever you can find that's the earth and just feel how good it feels. And I've had a group of psychologists say that was the greatest thing they've ever done in their life. They did it regularly. Connect with the mother. And then if you start to feel like it, go, well, I give thanks for this. This earth here is connected to farms and oxygen and gives me all these good things. And just do that for a minute or two every night to ground yourself. And you'll find that's a really good thing because it gets you out of your head and you're just experiencing something right now. So it's an act of mindfulness.
Paul, we are so grateful to have had this time with you. But before we finish up, where is the best place for people to find out more about you and the incredible work that you're doing?
There's a couple of different places. I'm not easy to find at the moment in terms of this new part of my life. So my business is called Callaghan Cultural Consultancy. So I do have a website where you can find me, and there's a link where you can click on the link and contact me via email. I'm in the process of creating a separate website in terms of my speaking engagements and all of my writing work. So that'll be in place in the next 6 months or so. But the best way to contact me if you suddenly have this fervent need to reach out to me is to contact me on LinkedIn. In terms of supporting the work I do, obviously, if you can buy a copy of The Dreaming Path, that's a great thing. And it's not me flogging a book to make money. You don't make a lot of money out of books when you're an author, but it's getting a really important message out there. And that's the privilege that Uncle Paul and I have with this book being a bestseller and also an Australian award-winning book as of recently it won an ARBIA award, which is quite a big deal, I've been told. So you can buy the copy of The Dreaming Path, and I can announce that I'm finishing a new book as we speak that will be out early next year, targeting 8 and 9-year-olds, and it will have 9 chapters, 9 Dreamtime stories based on my research on what young kids are facing at 8 and 9 years of age. It will be illustrated, and it will have a beautiful narrative about this old man who's an elder, Uncle Rolly, talking to these 2 kids and unpacking the Dreamtime stories. And so I'm really excited about that book coming out. It's a resource for kids to read, but also for parents and also teachers to use as conversation pieces.
Congratulations on that. I'd like to do a great big shout out for The Dreaming Path. It is just an amazing book by yourself and also Uncle Paul. It has so much gold in there for people, and it's opened my mind more deeply again of the importance of our understanding our Australian Indigenous people, because they are a wealth of information. And everything you've said today, it just really resonates in your book, but also the book for our younger students too, because they're so curious. So it's just been the utmost privilege to share this conversation with you, and also for your generosity for sharing that with us and our audience today. And I'm really grateful and hopeful for a much better future as we go moving forward.
I'm beyond hopeful. I think there is a better future because I've seen things start to turn.
What were some of the takeaways for you?
Oh, so many. I think what's sticking with me is the fast-moving bugs.
Oh, yes, I know. I'll never forget them now. Every time I go to the fridge, I'll think of those fast-moving bugs climbing all over me.
But I guess it's well-being in a nutshell. It's all those things that are underpinned, evidence-based practices that are underpinned by wellbeing science and, flow. The Hardy Chick sent me high, tell us about flow. Getting present and understanding where we're at in this moment. Balance is so important for our psychological well-being.
But it's also that balance. It's the self-care and that self-compassion as well, and really understanding that you are of value. And unless you look after you, it's really hard to look after everybody else.
Right, it comes back to that face mask, fitting your own face mask first kind of thing. And the unity, having unity and gratitude. I loved his little perspective of the 10 out of 10 exercise. When I think of gratitude, I think of that. And then that story, the respect of story, not only of your own, but of others.
But also that knowledge is shared. And even in the wellbeing literacy that we have, is that when we're supporting others by sharing their stories and the knowledge, and it helps other people to then identify what it is that they might need or want to explore and so forth.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that one of the other big things for me was he talked a lot about the harmony and being of one with that humanity. And I think, that's one great big thing that sat with me for a very long time. I don't know whether that's that spirituality part for me that I have a strength in, is we're all part of one world. But yet there's so much hatred and trying to be the best and that competition. I don't know why that is so important. I love when he talked about harvesting and harnessing. So you're harvesting those stories, you're harvesting the good, but you're also harnessing what is best for you. And I just love that. There was so much. And I think even he had me, even though we've read the book, we understand that. But when he talked first of all about what's helping to heal the world through the Aboriginal lens, it's that love and respect and humility and always sharing and the responsibilities and the relationships that we're always there to care and give. And that will just sit with me for some time now, I think. Such a beautiful human.
Yeah. All right. Well,
have an awesome day. Get out into nature.
My cup is full. Okay.
Yeah. See you soon, beautiful.
Right.
Okay.
And thank you for listening to the Imperfect Us podcast. As always, we are extremely grateful to our executive producer, Brenton Ainsworth, for helping us to put this episode together. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it with someone you care about, and we would be grateful if you could rate this podcast on iTunes. To continue the conversation and see what we're up to, you can connect with us on LinkedIn. Just search for Imperfect Us. Bye for now.